Thanks a lot for the invite. I'm so happy to be talking to you guys. I was really happy to receive this invitation. So I think thanks for the introduction. I think you got to know how to say my CV now, but I would like you to also during this talk get to know me a bit more as a person. So I'm going to be showing you some nice slides, but I don't want us to lose therefore this more personal connection, right? And I'm going to be talking you about, so to say, what I consider has been a great experience in my life, which is how to like start participating in data science competitions, and not to choose any competition, but to do, for to me, which is AI for good, right? I really try to have this contribution in our society. And then I also want to show you what I feel were kind of the challenges in that. And I feel like skills that maybe as a data scientist, I wouldn't have thought at the very beginning they were like super required. And now I think, oh, wow, if I could start over from the very beginning, that's all I would like to learn. Then, as you heard, I work for a big pharma company in Switzerland. And also I studied in a university which was not in my home country, right? So I come from Barcelona. It's a fantastic city close by to the sea, which like an amazing soccer team, amazing architecture, amazing colors. You have once to visit it. I studied abroad, right? So maybe I can share this experience a bit of like how you get to study abroad, advantages like working abroad, how I did it, so that if on a personal level you are considering or wishing to take this next step, how my experience can help you on that. And finally, I also put like some list of resources of things I'm engaging or trying to promote that maybe you find exciting and you want to take part to. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. So I call this presentation "How Can Deep Learning Charm Snakes?" or "Can Deep Learning Charm Snakes?" Because I recently discovered this very curious competition in AI crowds, which was about snake species identification challenge. So let me explain you a bit more what I mean by that. So as you see, it's a competition that's sponsored by the Institute of Global Health. And whenever I see like a challenge that's sponsored for like an institution that's trying to do um, something for instance, for World Health or so, then it's the kind of competition that calls me to engage because I'm, so to say, already happy with my work. So I'm quite sure I want to do it for money. But when I see a competition that I feel that's going to have an impact, that's the kind of thing I want to go for. So, so let's talk a bit more about which was this challenge. So the first thing you should know is why snake bite is such a big problem. So a snake bite, it's actually a disease, and it's one of the most deadly neglected tropical diseases, and it's being responsible for like a dramatic humanitarian crisis like worldwide. And I was very surprised to find out that it causes like over 100,000 human deaths and like about 400,000 victims that are like that have disabilities. So actually, if you see like the refugee camps, that's one of the posters they have everywhere, like in preventing snake bite. And of course, the impact of snake bite is bigger, like in rural communities, than it is in, for instance, big cities, right? And of course, most of these disabilities that are mentioned are, for instance, people that get bitten in the legs and then they don't have access to an antivenom and the leg needs to be like cut off so that the whole person doesn't die. Or sometimes children die if they get bitten on the face. So I thought, I had no idea this was such a big major issue. And then I definitely felt we as data scientists had this power, so to say, to try to do something, right? So yes, there are antivenoms, but sometimes this is accessing to these antivenoms is tricky because, well, on the to get the antivenom, you would need to be able to identify the snake, and that's tricky because there are high diversity of snakes, and sometimes the victim of snake bite is not able to tell you as a doctor which is the snake that bit them. So, for instance, in some cases, Victims are able to kill the snake, or a family member is fast enough to take a picture, but sometimes you might have like incomplete or misleading information. And then, of course, if you get to the closest nearby clinic, most likely that person is not going to be an expert in herpetology or, like, let's say, snake knowledge, right? So the chances that you get the right attention are small. And that's why it's such a big issue. So what I want to do now is kind of go over the main concepts of what I consider to be a challenge, or let's say, let me take maybe a small pause. It's like when as a data scientist you see this kind of problem with image classification. What I thought, it's like for me the usual way to go is you might go to a page like Papers with Code that allows you to see for any kind of problem or for many kinds of problem, let's see which solution worked well on very well known academic data sets like, let's say, ImageNet. And that gives you like an orientation of what you could do. And then there are awesome online free resources like FastAI. So FastAI is this amazing website library mock by Jeremy Howard and Rachel Thomas, which are like a fantastic community of people helping behind. And they teach you for free. So first, kind of take home message. They teach you for free, kind of like the basics of deep learning, and they show you how you can train a computer vision model, right? So a model you will use to identify those snake image and say that snake image is that snake class in, so to say, like 3 or 4 lines of code. So what you would possibly try to say is let's get a baseline with that. And if you try that, you will see that it's actually quite tricky. And I wanted to put together a few examples of why that's quite tricky. Okay, maybe I can hide this. Good. So first of all, because there is a lot of variation with age. So if you look at my left picture, you will see here like it's the same snake. But in one case, it's like still a baby, so to say, and in a juvenile, and in the other one, it's like grown up. And I was like amazed by seeing how different the same snake is. And what you see on the right, it's again the same snake, but in different regions of the wall. Um, and to me, again, they looked as completely different species, and yet it is the same species. So if you imagine that you have this task of training like a deep learning model that's able to get like, or any kind of model, right? But in definitely like an algorithm that it's able to take a picture and tell you that which snake class it is, you see how that becomes a challenge. But I want to show you more so that you see how interesting this problem is. Um, so, okay, and sorry, maybe a comment on this geographic variation. One of maybe the idea why I had about like suggesting this topic for this session today is because actually I know that many of you are based in India, and in India it's one of these regions of the world that you have like an incredible richness of like snakes, being of course the Amazonas, the absolute winner. But you see, compared to Basel or Barcelona, where I come from, we don't have that many snakes, right? So yeah, just kind of like FYI, you are part of, like, you are protagonists in this machine learning use case. Okay, so more challenges that you will face while training your models. And I'm saying all of that because yes, I went to kind of what I need and I knew how to do, right? Like training my, let's say, ResNet 50 with a few images, expecting awesome results. And then I discovered things were not maybe working as good as expected. And those are kind of big reasons why, but I think also why this problem is so damn interesting. Then what you see in this picture is like basically that there are, so what you see on the left are snakes that are super poisonous. And what you see on the right are snakes that are not poisonous at all. But as like evolutionary strategy or to protect themselves, they try to look like the ones on the left. So again, you need a machine learning model that's able to tell these tiny little differences, because again, those snakes will probably live in the same geographic region. That's the whole game of the strategy, right? So I think it's super interesting. I never thought snakes were just like a fascinating creature. So don't get a cat, get a snake as a pet. I think that's another message. So what else? Okay, so another thing that you will realize, and that's a very important point in data science, is we always say in a more generic line that whenever or let's say we talk about the classic concept of training, validation, and testing set, right? We say, your training set could look however you want, but your validation and testing set needs to have a similar distribution of your data. Why? Well, because you want to kind of try out, because the whole point of the validation thing set is to know how good your model will work on your testing set, which is probably unlabeled, or the reality set, right? So, and that's why you want them to have a similar distribution. Then what happens on the training set, or what happens in this case? Well, if you scroll the web for snake pictures, snake look as if they were some kind of like Instagrammers. So you will find this kind of like super pretty pictures. But when you think about this is probably a very different situation that the pictures that will be taken by someone who just got bitten by a snake. So how do you deal with that? And of course, the whoever organized this competition, they know that really well, right? So I mean, they were different rounds, so they will put those more they will put those tricky images in your testing set because they don't care that much of how good your model does in, so to say, Instagram or National Geographic pictures. They care about how good your model does in the real world, right? So let me show you part of the images that were in that data set, and that you would say those are images that my user could let's fast forward now one step. There is The end goal is never to win a data science competition or as the organizer to have like a great solution. I think the end goal is to kind of solve a real world problem in any business context, and in this case a global health problem, right? So you probably want to have this model running in the back end of, like, let's say an app application, so that your person takes like a picture, and then the model returns the predictions to the end user, right? So which are those pictures that you will see? So those pictures could look like that. There were, so to say, snakes that were completely destroyed, snakes that were like super tiny, small, and you will barely see them. And depending on how you crop that image, right? If when you pre-process the images, most likely you want them all to have the same size, so that you, for instance, can't put them in a GPU, which means graphical processing unit, in case you don't know, and it's kind of this big, powerful piece of hardware that will allow you to do deep learning way faster. But the point being is that you see here that depending on how you crop this image, you will probably lose the snake. Or in the upper one, we only see a tiny bit of the snake. Or you might even find some images that honestly they have no snake at all. But yeah, I mean, pornography is like a thing everywhere. So how do you deal with those kind of inputs, right? And those are images, like I said, they are all real from the testing set of the let's say a subsample of the testing set of the competition that was given to participants to validate the solution. And on the left, finally, like upper left, you have this snake that you see like very far away in the street that probably somebody took from like the window of the car. So that again asks the question, how do you crop the image? Do you want to really jump straight ahead into like image classification? Or maybe you should use this data set and do some manual work to first of all detect snakes. And once you have kind of played some kind of like bounding boxes around the region where your snake is, then maybe then you want to crop and move to image classification, right? So I thought I'm sharing all of that with you because I think it's it's a problem that has high impact for us all, and it's also very interesting to discuss and very curious. So more challenges it's a super imbalanced data set. So I think there were like 78 snake classes, and those are the ones you see on the x-axis. And what you see on the right axis is the frequency at which like all these snake types were like appearing. And you see that for like some of those, you have like lots of pictures, but for many you have actually like very, very close to no pictures. So as the organizer of the competition, that makes you think about which metric do you want to use, or even if you were not competing, right? As a data scientist, you should think it's, for instance, accuracy a good metric for this problem? Probably not. Um, what do I want to use for this problem? It's like a metric like F1 score, a good metric. Honestly, that was the one from the competition, but I kind of like asked myself, do you really care? Kind of, or maybe my thought was be like, maybe you could actually want to allocate more weight on detecting correctly those snakes that are poisonous, that are venomous, right? So I think that kind of triggers many afterthoughts. And what do you do, a participant? Do you kind of want to then try to scroll the web and go to pages that you know have like pictures of snakes to kind of enhance your training set and get more images from those classes that you rarely have known? And then also kind of my afterthoughts of being like, yeah, but if I'm going to, because you realize that if I'm going to the same pages the competitions organizers use to train, like to get probably the data sets, up to which point I am doing a good job, because like then chances are you're getting extra images, you're getting images that will be on the testing set, so you're getting up on the leaderboard with a model that one day could be the cause of death of someone, right? So it's kind of how do you handle this situation? More stuff. Then this competition had different rounds, and when I participated in like the second round of the competition, and then 2 days ago, like the fourth round closed, I said I want to do it again. And the reason why was because I saw it for the first time. It was like a mixed deep learning problem. So they started to also gather information about like the country in which the snake picture was taken, and of course like then the continent, right? And I think that makes it like way more interesting as a participant, because then you can leverage this tabular data and combine it with your classification model. So you have, so to say, a mixed deep learning problem, which I think it's super super interesting. So I'm here like a big shout out to my friend Zachary Muller, who is a very active member of the Fast AI community, always helping people. And kind of when we started participating in this together, that was a bit the excuse, the existence of this other data source type. Then, to be honest, I mean, I said, like, I decided to participate in the fourth round just 2 days before the deadline closed. It was more of like, let's do it again. Let's try it. And we did not manage to get the mixed deep learning model working. And you're gonna ask yourself, kind of like, why? And that's kind of like a bit kind of the learnings I want to share here, or what I discovered is such so important as kind of like training a good data science model. So why participating in such a competition is challenging. So there were more like there were like roughly like 700 people that participated, like 680 something, but only like I would say 10% of those managed to submit. And you will see kind of why later on. But what I wanted to show you is that there were so many images. It was like 260, yeah, 260, 100,000 images, and it was like 44 gigas, right? So I don't know how big the storage space in your computer is. Mine is like 256 gig. So it's clear that most likely you won't have space to do it locally. And even if you have that space, certainly you need to have, for this kind of problem with images, like a GPU. Otherwise, you're not going nowhere. So that's the first point where I say, it's not only about knowing a bit of data science. It's not only about taking the Fast AI course. You also need to know a bit of cloud. And for instance, I used the AWS cloud. They sponsored this challenge, and I was using this instance that I highlighted in yellow, which basically had like 4 B100s from NVIDIA, right? So I'm saying I had quite a powerful hardware, and nevertheless, like I was training in like parallel. Each of the epochs was taking me about half an hour. Um, and of course, you could do things so that it takes less. You could train at like mixed precision training. You could make your images smaller, but then you have to also then have the time to evaluate how this will affect the accuracy of your model, how cropping or padding or like all these decisions you take may speed up the training, but maybe you will have to invest in the time to assess what it means. And of course, to work in a public cloud like AWS, then you need to have a bit of Unix-like systems knowledge, right? So maybe like most of you, the first computer I got was the Windows, and then I discovered at some point that and then I was a bit resilient to change to a Unix-like system, like my private computer is a Ubuntu. But I also use like CentOS, or I've also used like RHEL. And I was a bit resilient to do this change because I thought, oh, I'm so comfy with my Windows. But then you realize actually how that speeds you up, right? And how important it is to know these kind of things when you want to go to AWS or Google Cloud or Azure or Alibaba Cloud, like you name it, right? So those are that kind of skills that you definitely need to learn at some point of your career. And probably they will never be the priority, but they will always be super necessary. And I think that's the message I want to say. So in which platform was this competition hosted? And the platform is called AI Crowd, and I will be showing more of it later. You can check it out. I think they have like super interesting stuff in there. I'm also a big fan of Kaggle. Of I think the competitions are great ideas, but also like the learning materials they have, the courses. I think it's a bit more about myself. I'm a big fan of everything that's like open source, open data. So I think that the work the Kaggle folks have done in basically making data sets at the reach of everyone and helping everyone get started is also like something I truly admire. So okay, coming back to AI Crowd, when you compete with AI Crowd, they ask you to basically submit everything with GitLab. So it's not a CSV file where you have like the image name of the snake and then the snake class or the probabilities. You actually need to submit your code. Basically, for instance, that's kind of how your submission looks like. It's the actual repo. And then what will you find in your repo, right? Then you will have kind of like some JSON file that allows you to identify yourself within your system. And when you push to that repo, a CI/CD pipeline will be triggered in the background. So you will be asked to submit your model. You will be asked to submit the requirements of the environment. And when the CI/CD pipeline is triggered, you see this auto DevOps, it will automatically build, test, and deploy your application. That's exactly what happens. They are going to build in a Docker container the environment with all your requirements. They will try to run your model, and then your model will have to generate the predictions in the format they ask for. And that's why out of this like 680 something people, only so few managed to get it working. Because again, this kind of skill set, it's way more than just like only knowing how to train a good image classifier, right? Um, so, but I think at the same time, as participant attempting to do that, it's a fantastic learning. What else? So okay, now that I have talked about all that, maybe what happens to me when I go to a conference, I probably only really care about the person who is talking when they have kind of said things that they interest me. So what I always felt is I would have listened more at their presentations if I had met them after they said something that they interest me. So I hope that by now I have said something that interests you. And I wanted to kind of say a bit more about what I, for instance, do in my work, which is not classifying snakes, right? That's actually kind of like a just for fun or AI for good projects. So I would say what I do in my work is I work at this big pharma company, and the message I and the first thing I want to say is go work in healthcare. I think it's a fantastic sector, and we definitely need all of you, right? Especially like nowadays. I think in very few sectors you will have this feeling you're really having this impact. So if you are very very smart, which I'm sure you are, go work in our sector. Then what I do there? Well, I have done different things, but one of the things you should truly know is that if you want to put if you have this awesome fantastic machine learning algorithm that's, for instance, able to, because you're good with images, detect if like a patient has cancer or does not have cancer based on like a histological image, on like a tissue image, and you say, that's something the world would like to buy, that's something it could improve many of patients' lives, you could say, I want to bring it to the market. And then what you will learn is that you cannot simply put such an algorithm to the market. If you put this app, if that were an app and you would put it in the Apple Store, that would actually in Europe be a crime. And you could even go to jail for that, because you're basically releasing to the market an unapproved medical device. Um, so when you developed a medical device a medical device in general, and also a medical device that uses AI, doesn't matter if it's like only hardware or it also combines software, you need to go through a very extensive regulatory process. And in Europe, you need to get CE marking. In the US, you need to go through the FDA and so on, right? So then there needs to be people that when a new technology comes, or let's say maybe it doesn't come, but it starts being a reality in the business, and we could say AI had this explosion just very recently, then there needs to be people who says, we cannot be changing the laws every day when that happens, right? Because otherwise, every time a new technology comes, we would need to have like the Congress, or in our case, in the European case, we would need to have like the European Commission changing the law. So there needs to be like guidelines and people thinking about how can we adapt our current legal system so that these new technologies have a place. And that's what I try to do, and also what kind of I try to do in this pharmaceutical medical device company, right? So that's more kind of my day-to-day work. And in my free time, as I said, I try to contribute to open source projects. For instance, these last 2 days has been EuroPython. It's an amazing conference, and tomorrow and Sunday we are having the sprints, and the sprints are free of charge, and it's your opportunity to collaborate in an open source project. So check it out. I'm really sure you will learn a lot by doing it. I'm definitely gonna be doing it. Um, so yes, when I'm not doing this open source stuff, what I also try to do is I try to look for competitions like the one I show that I feel I want to invest my time in, because not only I can learn something, but I can do this something for society. So I'm gonna be showing you a bit later another competition that I know will be opening soon, and that I think that please take part in it and please do better than me, because I'm going to try to do good. So if you do better than me, that means we are really helping a lot. So what else? Yeah. So sometimes like a question I get asked for from friends, and we are switching now to more this career advice phase, is how do I get like a job, for instance, at your company. I said I work at a big pharma. This pharma is called Roche. Or so a few comments on that, right? So let me explain you how. So Roche is like a big multinational company. So the first question is in which country do you want to work, right? So I'm going to be telling you how the situation in Switzerland is, in case you were considering ever like at some point kind of switching and working in Switzerland. So basically the easiest, so if you as people coming from, let's say, India want to work in Switzerland, you need like a special work permit. And that's why trying to work at a big company, be it like a big tech or a pharma or a consulting company, it's going to make it way easier, because you need them, so to say, to sponsor your permit, and they need to do all this paperwork. And it's a pity, but it's a problem that many smaller companies or even Roche do not want like super talented people because of the paperwork, because there is this law that says that they cannot, so to say, discriminate between like someone who is Swiss and a European, but they can, so to say, discriminate between someone who's not coming from Europe. So it would also be the case for the US. And I personally think that's very unfair. I personally think we are, as Switzerland is missing on lots of great talents, but that's how the situation is, and I want you to be aware of that. So how can you like overcome? Then go to these companies who, for very specific profiles, will be willing to go through the paperwork. Otherwise, go to Switzerland for your studies. I've met many friends from like top Indian institutes that came to ETH for his master's or her master's and then stayed for a PhD. And when you build this very specific profile, it's again easier afterwards for a company to sponsor your work permit. Or maybe you don't want to go to a company at all and you just stay at ETH or at EPFL, which are honestly awesome engineering schools. Um, what else? Then, if you feel you already have some work experience and you would like to start, I feel within Roche, for instance, or some people reach out to me in LinkedIn and they ask me kind of, can you get me a job? And honestly, I cannot get anyone a job because I don't work in human resources. And Roche is a company that only in Basel, in kind of my city, so to say, has 14,000 employees. So there is very, very little I, as Gloria, can do in that sense. But what I can do is recommend you how I got in, which is these graduate programs. And they have graduate programs in all areas, and all areas are looking for tech talents, like probably you. So I started in the IT one, but like human resources is also working for it's also looking for data scientists. The business perspective program is also looking for data scientists. So they are all super, super interested in having you, and they will sponsor your travel, right? So those are, again, like I think fantastic ways to get started if that interests you. And I'm putting here the ones from Roche because I mean it's my company, but I'm not saying they are the best. If you check Novartis, another pharma company, has some most consultant companies like you name it, Accenture, A.T. Kearney, Deloitte have also some graduate programs. So I'm saying Google graduate programs, company you like, and you will find fantastic career opportunities. And then the other thing I get asked a lot is from people that have like a local company and they want to do business with Roche. And here it's also the same. If you want to approach these companies and do business, make sure you approach the right person, because when you try to do business with a medium to small company, maybe it doesn't really matter who you approach. Like routes would be very fast, and they don't maybe have like a very formal approval process. But for instance, in Roche, because we are such like an enterprise, we cannot take an offer from anyone. We have like a whole process, and our vendors have to be approved. So what happens to me is that I might like a company, but I can still not allow to work with them. I would have to talk, so to say, or somebody way above myself would have to talk to procurement first and get all the process rolling, right? So I want you to give you some inside information about how big enterprises work and how you kind of do business with them if you both as an employee or as a service provider. Yes, so that's kind of a bit, I wanted to put a bit of kind of career capsule. And some closing thoughts is keep learning. I think what I wanted to say is that there are tons of super interesting stuff to learn. And what has like basically like elevated my skill set a lot is like getting started with the cloud. And I'm actually now even like a certified cloud architect. Like 2 years ago, there was no way I could have imagined that, right? And it's actually not that hard. And that's the truth, right? Sometimes people want to sell things as being very hard because that makes them sound smarter and more exclusive, but it's a lie. It's not that hard. You need to study a bit. So I know many of you asked me to get connected on LinkedIn, and I felt super happy you did. And if you look a bit through my LinkedIn, you would see I actually did like short video of how I did it, and maybe these tricks can also help you too. More keep learning stuff. As I said, I'm from Barcelona, and I run there like a meetup, and I have and sometimes big tech companies sponsor events in there, right? So the next event we have coming will be sponsored by Google Cloud, and because of the Corona situation, which I'm very sad about, this event will take place online. That means that I can invite you all, if you will, to join this event. So the group is called Barcelona Coding Monkeys, because in Barcelona we had once a white gorilla, and that was something very unique in the world. So that's why I called the group this way. And we are gonna have in the 10th of August like a Google Cloud Study Jam, and I'm sure I will find also some very very interesting speakers for you to hear. So yeah, kindly, if you feel learning Google Cloud absolutely for free, you will get some free credits to learn. It's something that could interest you. Please feel free to join us. I'll post the link to the event in the in the Google post of this event we are having now, so you will get the information. And yes, finally, more keep learning stuff. Participate in the AI crowd competition of mask detection challenge. I think you will see kind of all those things I mentioned about how tricky it is to see the whole setup, learn to the Docker thing, submit, and it's gonna be probably a painful experience for some of you, but it's in a good way. You definitely learn a lot, and I think also for a good cause. So this challenge is starting soon. If you feel it could be of your interest, by all means take part. And I think that's all I wanted to say. I hope you find it interesting, and yeah, feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you, Gloria, for such an in-depth talk and also guiding the viewers about the available job opportunities in various domains, including healthcare. So we have a bunch of questions, and I'll ask them. So before I ask the questions that have been put up by the viewers, I just wanted to know what, according to you, is the best way for a person who has some experience in data science, machine learning, but wants to start deep learning and wants to go and work on some real world problems. So what is the best path that one could follow?
hmm Okay, so I guess I will be trying to now to do my best to answer your questions. But please keep in mind that those are just my opinions, right? Um, so you should always do at the end what you feel is best for you, right? That's what I'm trying to say here. That I by no means try to impose you my thoughts or anything. So okay, so look, I'm at least like I consider myself like a very like passion driven person. So I would say if you want to get now started into like deep learning, pick a problem that interests you. So, for instance, for the basic knowledge, if you want the hands on part, the Fast AI course is fantastic. If you want more the theory, there is this course in Coursera from like Andrew In has like a deep learning specialization, will teach you like the theory very well. So if you have both the practice and the theory, you're like really fully fledged. But then you will only learn for real when you start applying it. And that could be at your job, but you will maybe discover that actually like big companies don't have that many deep learning problems. So maybe it's going to be in one of these online competitions, right? So pick like a problem that you feel it's super interesting and work on that. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. So another question that we have is, how can we come up with feature engineering other than the obvious? So probably feature engineering in maybe tabular data or any related problem. So any techniques that you think we can go for feature engineering purposes?
hmm okay, when it comes down to feature engineering, I think or let me put it that way. I think what's to me very important when doing feature engineering is getting constant baselines. So what I feel is people sometimes spend way too much time crafting features or getting more data in the case of, for instance, like an image problem. And what they should instead do is really like each time you get something new, try where that improves your baseline. And I'm saying that because what I see is sometimes models that have like, that's obviously an exaggeration, but thousands of features. And you're like, yeah, but maybe just using 10 will have given you a very similar result. And that has a massive impact in the interpretability of your model. And that comes again to the point that what's your goal? Maybe for a machine learning competition, you have to be the boss in feature engineering and you need to kind of know all these little tricks. But when you start doing that in the corporate world, and that's what I feel, then it's all more about change management and convincing your stakeholders of how this model can be used and how this model works. And then you probably will appreciate a model that doesn't have that many features and that has features that are easy to interpret. Yeah.
So one of the question here is that could you point us towards any techniques for imbalanced data set? Because I think the real world data set is highly imbalanced most of the times. So what are the techniques that you prefer for handling imbalanced data sets?
hmm So I think one of the, or I would say, if possible, one of the big tricks is get more data, right? So I know that's kind of what many participants of this competition do. They scroll the web, get additional images, but then what we then felt in the discussion forum or the competition is that people start realizing that actually they were taking images from the testing set, and then you have this contradiction of, well, you have you're not really learning, right? You're training your model with the solution. So what also some people do is they balance the data set artificially. Like, of course, I mean, at the end, if you're gathering new data, you're also balancing it. But what I say is that they can prefer, like, they could perform like oversampling or undersampling. And even like more sophisticated cases would be like generating data that mimics your training distribution. But then you have to make sure that you're doing that right. So what I usually try to go for is getting more data, because that usually, if you have, it's what I said before, right? That you can have, so to say, any data you want in your training set. What matters is that the validation set distribution matches your testing set. So I feel that's where I truly have the freedom to experiment.
Thank you, Gloria, for answering the question in such detail. And I'm sure the participants have got their answers. And in case they want to know more about it, you all can connect to Gloria on LinkedIn. I'll share her LinkedIn profile and also the link to the meetup group, the Barcelona Coding Monkeys, in the description. You guys can join that. And before we end, Gloria, I just wanted to ask a personal question. Since you are in healthcare domain, what are your views on explainable AI, and especially because in healthcare, I think it does matter a lot because the ability to explain your decisions to regulators, like you mentioned, is of utmost importance. So, what are your views on some of the things that are taking place right now using machine learning and artificial intelligence, which really have no explainability power in them?
Yes, so I think it's a super good question. It's a really really good point. Look, like most of the discussions I have at work is not about like how, let me put it that way. Most companies will get a data science department because it looks cool, or they want to have this skill set. But then the discussions the data scientists in these departments will have most often are going to be about convincing your business stakeholders that that's not only like a cool toy, that can be used. And for that, they would have a lot of questions of how it works. And if you have used like a big deep learning model, you're probably don't have yourself much explanations of those. So what I see a lot is like hybrid approaches, like talks about augmented AI, and for instance, trying to link it back to the example I presented. Probably what you would have is like a model that gives a prediction, but the same image will be sent to a community of experts that also will give a prediction. Or maybe for like the images that you are like overrepresented in your very imbalanced, as said before, training set, you will get like a direct answer from the model, but maybe for like the other ones, you will have to wait. So what I'm seeing is that that machine learning, so to say, is used deep learning less and on its own quite rarely, mostly like combined with, so to say, human input to compensate for this lack of explainability. And that if you want to make a career in data science, probably to get started showing how cool data science is going to be enough. But at some point, you will have to build this skill set of convincing and building trust among the people you're talking to, right? So I think that's a good take home message, the importance of building trust in data science if you want to devote yourself to healthcare.
Absolutely. So, with this, we come to the end of this lovely session. Thanks a lot to everybody who joined us today. And the recording of this event will be posted here on YouTube. And yes, have a great weekend, all of you. Thank you.